Mr. Thomas McDevitt, the chairman of the Washington Times.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tanya, my good friend. Dr. Tanya Edwards, your great leadership for World Christian Leadership Conference, and especially a warm hello to my dear brother, Dr. Kian Kim, for your amazing leadership and character, and everyone else on the panel. Dr. Hannah, I love your work, your scholarship, and it's good to have such a rational but principled voice from the great nation of England and representing Europe and the Middle East. I'd like to take a few minutes today to share a couple of thoughts with friends who are on this call. And I know we've got people from Korea and Europe and Africa and the Caribbean and all throughout the United States, and peace-loving global citizens, which is the title of a book that's on the test. You've got to read this to pass the test. And that's the autobiography of Dr. Sun Myung Moon, Peace-Loving Global Citizens. What the world needs now is that, and that's why we're here. Let's talk about the human impact of what's happening. We watch the TV every day. How many times are you checking in your phone or on television to see this unbelievable barbarism, the tragedy that's taking place, the human stories? It's impossible to even describe it. And you're watching the media that's very polarized. You have the people, the conservative side, the liberal side in the US, but both sides are looking at the tragedy of war and the absolute failure of authoritarian, totalitarian leadership. What guides that leadership? What guides the person at the helm of that leadership? It's worldview. It's a passion and a total commitment to a way of life and a way of looking at the world. And the same worldview that's driving the tragedy in Ukraine coming from Russia is a similar worldview that's going on in other parts of the world. We could say that the very root of that worldview is the difference between a godly point of view and a more materialistic, atheistic, secular point of view. And that's why the role of the Korean Peninsula is so central. So let's shift our attention for a few minutes from the Ukraine and the pain we see every moment over to Korea and step back about 10,000 feet, or rise up about 10,000 feet, if you will. Why is Korea so important? Why does Mother Moon, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, who now heads the movement that her late husband launched, why is she so focused on it? Did you know that leadership always depends upon vision? As we know in the book of Proverbs, without vision, the people perish. Look at the work that Dr. Moon is doing, where she paints this vision amidst world leaders all over, heads of state at the recent World Summit. The vision articulated by her is that Korea can be united in a very short period of time, even by 2023 to 2027. We are just passing through this last week of spring. As she likes to point out, daffodils are coming up, right? Or they're already out. Spring is blooming in everywhere you're at. We're at the end of the first quarter of 2022. I'm in business with my good colleagues, Dr. Jenkins and Dr. Walsh, and many of my good friends in the H.J. Magnolia world. So time is essential. This moment is a transitional moment of change. Springtime on the providential level. Going back to Dr. Moon, she calls for a unification of Korea, and she's established as like a providential architect, a strategy that is rooted in faith. That's why World Christian Leadership Conference and American Clergy Leadership Conference are so vital, and the Korean Clergy Leadership Conference and the Asia and the European. The role of clergy, the role of believers is absolutely at the root, but it's not all, because you've got to have the rest of the society out there, which is why UPF is so important and all the associations that are going on. When we think of the human impact of the Korea situation, I would encourage you also on the test at the end of the quarter is this book, Mother of Peace. If you don't have this and haven't read it, or if you have read it, go back and read the gripping story of a young 6-year-old girl with her mother and grandmother escaping just before the war with bombs going off, just like Ukraine. That's what Mother Moon came from, as a deep-hearted Christian woman. And then she went on through her life to be together with Dr. Moon, and they celebrated their holy wedding in 1960. We're going to celebrate it in a few weeks. It's an imperative story. You've got to read this one and read the other book. Why? Because it tells the human story of what it meant to be divided from people. Even on this very call, our dear friend and brother, Dr. Kian Kim, he fled North Korea. His family was left behind. He didn't write, he couldn't call, he couldn't email, he couldn't visit. Can you imagine that? My former boss, Dr. Douglas D.M. Jew, the former president of the Washington Times, his father was a great surgeon. He was young, 10 years old when he fled. He never talked to his father after that. The North Koreans took him and held him and used him as a physician. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people face that same situation, millions of people. Why is Korea matter? Why does Korea matter? Because it is the central front line of this clash of principalities between good and evil. It's a small country, but it's vital as a peninsula country. Just like Italy, just like Israel, in a sense, you could say Korea is really in a role similar to Israel when Jesus walked the earth. That's why I ask you all, pay attention, number one. Devote yourself even a few minutes or an hour a day to help move this providential effort. Connect with ACLC. If you're volunteering once in a while, give it a little more. Tithe your time. Connect with WCLC. Read the Washington Times. Get informed. Teach the principle. Get engaged even more. That's what I'm rejoining the movement, Dr. Kim. I'm rejoining today in this moment because we've got to save Korea, Ukraine, Russia, China, and all the world. It's going to happen because God's saints, God's people that's you and me, we have to take up not the arms of guns and bullets and nuclear weapons, but the sword of truth and the healing power of God's love that emanates in the family, and it reaches out to the community. Folks, your role is not insignificant. It is extremely important. Let's decide today to make Korea the true unified nation that God expects and intends. And let's work together from now till 2027, no matter how old you are, no matter what your situation is. Let's make this the public offering of God's civilization on earth. Thank you for the chance to be with you today. Let's move together, and may God bless you, and true parents touch your heart and mind. And to all our friends all over the world, let's work together. Thank you.